Hi, my name is Johanna Miller. I'm the Advocacy Director at the New York Civil Liberties Union. We are the New York State affiliate of the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. We have about 100,000 members and supporters in New York State. We are a membership organization. People don't always think of the ACLU as a membership organization, but we are in fact a membership organization, and we encourage you to become a member. This week has been a moment when a lot of people are finding their inner civil libertarian. And so I encourage you to go to the NYCLU's website and become a member and join us. So an integral part of our advocacy program is a protest monitoring project. And so we do support for all kinds of demonstrations. The NYCLU, like the ACLU, is a nonpartisan organization, and we believe in the principles of the First Amendment, whether or not we believe in the content of what is being spoken. And so we provide that kind of support to organizations across the spectrum to do public demonstrations and really any kind of protest. So marching in the street is one kind of protest. There are other kinds. I will say, I think at a moment like this, the right to protest and the ability to exercise that right in whatever form it takes is such an essential tool that we have. And it's the sight of people marching in the streets is the thing that an autocrat can't stand the most. That, or maybe like a joke about that person. But other than that, humor and protest are essential tools for us right now. And so we at the NYCLU are really getting out there and really talking with people and training them up about how to exercise those rights. So we do everything from working on the permit side of things to actually sending out trained protest monitors to demonstrations. On the permit side of things, here in New York City, we have a pretty, I wouldn't say complicated, but a well-regulated permitting system for public demonstrations that the NYPD controls. And for a permitted demonstration, even for enormous demonstrations, 50,000 people, 100,000 people, even more than that. The climate change march a couple of years back had far more than that. A permitted demonstration is actually a fairly low-risk activity in New York City. The NYPD is decently good at keeping their heads when they know what the route is, they know who to expect, and they know where you're going. You know, you'll see them set up those fences, they send out a big force, and they stay fairly calm when they know that when they have something to expect and they have a permit to rely on. So I would say for people who are not sure how to get engaged in public demonstrations or whether that's safe for you, a permitted demonstration is a fairly low risk proposition. Now you have to make that determination for yourself, and the circumstances can change rapidly. So the lawyer side of me is saying that is a question that you should examine on your own. But in the large scheme of things, permitted demonstrations are fairly uneventful in terms of mass arrests. Non-permitted demonstrations are an essential part of protest. As the professor was saying, there are messages that need to be conveyed in different ways. And sometimes working with the NYPD to tell them your plans is anathema to your message, right? It doesn't fit with the message that you're trying to convey. Those kinds of demonstrations can go either way. After the non-indictment in the Eric Garner case, we saw spontaneous mass demonstrations all over New York City with relatively few arrests for the huge numbers of people in the streets. The NYPD, the mayor's office, the administration basically said, we need to find ways to protect these protesters, we need to find ways to make this demonstration safe, and we need to allow the city to express this feeling. And they basically did that. There were arrests, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but essentially they accommodated a lot of protests. Contrast that with the Occupy Wall Street movement, where part of the Occupy movement, every single day they did these non-permitted kind of improv demonstrations, and essential to that, the performance of that protest was that they didn't even know the route, right? They would start walking, and they would walk around Ducati Park, and once they had enough people, they would just start going. And the police would follow them, and me and my protest monitors would follow them, and we never knew where they were going, and that was part of their message. And those got ugly. There was huge amount of police use of force during Occupy Wall Street. There were mass arrests during Occupy Wall Street. And so it can really run the spectrum when you're participating in a non-permitted demonstration. So in that, I would advise a lot of caution, especially if you feel that you are particularly vulnerable to law enforcement intervention for one reason or another. I brought today, and they're on these side tables, there's some there and there's some here, our pocket guide, Know Your Rights, What to Do If You're Stopped by the Police. And that is also available as an app on the App Store, so you can download it for free. And it's basically just the briefest guide to your rights in a police interaction, so if the police stop you during a protest or otherwise. And that's where it starts to take over into more of our Know Your Rights with Police section of our work, and not just the First Amendment section. But all of those things apply just as they would if you were just sitting on a bench and a police officer came up to you in the same way in a protest. The one thing that I'll note, and then I'm going to introduce our member who's here today, Phoebe, who's going to talk a little about what it's like to do protest monitoring, is in the age that we live in now, where a lot of planning, particularly of civil disobedience and different things, everything's done on your phone. The phone can be a real vulnerability for people who are planning or participating in mass demonstrations. And so some really practical tips. The biggest one is don't use your fingerprint to lock your phone. The police can force you to put your finger on your phone, but they cannot force you to give up your password. So a password is best. To download an app that is encrypted to do messaging, don't use your native text app. I would use Signal or WhatsApp. If I was planning a protest, we also use that as protest monitors. We use WhatsApp and Signal to communicate with each other during a demonstration. So those are just some tips. And then the one thing that nobody does anymore, memorize one phone number, because you're not going to be able to look in your phone when you get arrested, if you get arrested. So memorize one phone number. If that is your National Lawyers Guild, they are very likely to be out at big demonstrations providing legal support. They also provide jail support and defense. That's a volunteer lawyer organization that does primarily First Amendment work. That's a good number to have. They have a hotline. Sometimes it may be the NYCLU's phone number, but memorize that one number, because we rely a lot on our cell phones to pull these things off. The final thing that I'll say, if you are engaged in planning a demonstration that is non-permitted, or you're planning civil disobedience, I would leave all the phones in another room out of earshot. The NSA can listen to you. I'm not just a paranoid tinfoil hat ACLU person, that is fact. And so it's best to just leave those phones in another room just to protect yourselves if you're planning civil disobedience, because you are taking a risk in planning civil disobedience, then you want to minimize that risk as much as possible. So I'm going to turn it over to Phoebe to talk a little bit about what it's like to be doing protest monitoring and what service we provide. And also to tell you guys, if you are interested, at the end of her talk, we are about to do a massive training for protest monitors the first week of December. We would love to see you all there. If you'd like to become a protest monitor and join our list, you would just get basically an email that says, look, we have a demonstration coming up. We need 10 people. Tell us if you're available. So I'll let Phoebe tell you what that's all about.